Hello and welcome. My name is Damon Rands and I am the founder of Wolfsbury. Wow, that's a great start. Wolfsbury Cyber Limited. We're a cyber security company based in the heart of Cardiff, and today I'm chairing this great Wales Week in London event, Silicon Valley's cultivating the green tech grass of home. A very, very quick bit of housekeeping. If I could ask everybody to mute their microphones, apart from the speakers, obviously, the panel, that would be amazing. And if anybody has any questions, that'll be fine. I'm sure we can try and cater for those. If you would like to use the messaging platform and Teams, that would be amazing. But you know, let's get started as people join in. So we're incredibly lucky today to be joined by a fantastic panel. They're going to tell us why Wales is the perfect global destination for tech businesses across all sectors, really. So with that, I'd like just to spend a couple of minutes introducing everyone. I think we'll start with Louise first, if we could. Louise Harris of Tramshed Tech and the Big Learning Company and all things tech in Wales. And she's a fantastic role model for everyone. Louise, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Damon, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. It's great to be sharing a panel with Pete and Peter, and I hope to keep those separate as we go through the panel. But I've wanted to share a platform with you, Damon, and with Pete for a while, so it's great that I'm getting the opportunity to do that today. As Damon said, I'm Louise Harris. I'm the founder of Tramshed Tech. Our HQ is based in the centre of Cardiff, and I also started Tramshed because I had my own edtech company that I was looking to put somewhere super collaborative and super connected. Couldn't find anywhere, so the idea for Tramshed was born. So yeah, a couple of different hats, but as Damon said, really keen to support tech right across Wales, not just here in Cardiff.
Thank you, Louise. That's amazing. And if we could now, you did note, that's correct. We have got a Pete and a Peter today. I am trying to be one formal and one informal. So if we could have Mr. Pete Burnap from Cardiff University, that would be fantastic. How are you, Pete? You okay?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, I'm Pete Burnap. I'm Professor of Data Science and Cybersecurity here at Cardiff University, where I lead the Centre of Excellence for Cybersecurity Research. And I suppose as a demonstration of the collaboration in Wales, I've also spent the last 5 or 6 years leading AI for cyber innovation at Airbus out of their research hub in Newport. Great to be here.
And obviously he's very far away in Caerleon, so we're having a bit of connection issues there. Pete, you've pixelated. Right, that's fab. And then obviously Peter, saving the best to last, Mr. Freeth. Now, Peter has recently joined the International Relations and Trade team at Welsh Government, and you used to be with Renewable Energy. Is that correct, Pete?
Yeah, thanks, Damon. Yeah, I'm new to the cyber. I'm the innovation inward investment lead for the cyber team in the Welsh Government. Prior to that, I was with the Renewable Energy team. So I've been in Welsh Government for a number of years now, working with businesses that want to relocate in Wales. But the technology around cyber is new to me, so I'm learning. But in terms of bringing companies to Wales and helping them thrive, I've been doing that for quite a while now.
That's absolutely fantastic. So thank you all for joining us today. Really excited to see what we're going to talk about and where this goes, right? But I think let's start, with a question for you, Louise, really. I think so. And again, you can speak about this in so many different ways. So I think that'll be fantastic. What are the benefits of founding a tech company in Wales?
That's a great place to start, I think, Damon. Thank you. When I meet a company for the first time, and I'm thinking that Peter in his new role may have a similar experience. When I meet a new company, whether that's an individual thinking about a business idea, whether that's a startup wanting to base themselves in Wales, or whether that's a scaling company to grow. Sorry, I'm feeding back to my or an inward investment company, they all want the same thing. They're all looking for the same thing. and they ask me the same questions. It's regardless of their size and scale. And those three core things that they ask for are around connectivity. So can we collaborate? Can we be connected? Can we work with other like-minded people? It's around finance. So are there supportive banks? Are there ways that we can access investment? Are there revenue streams that we can tap into here in Wales? And then the third key area is skills and training. And I think, if we take those three key areas that companies look for, the first one I mentioned was connections, connectivity. And it's worth us noting that, because it sometimes gets forgotten in the UK context, we're a country, not a region. And when I look at how we're described often by central government, we kind of get bulked in with Tech North or Tech West, and Wales becomes another region. But in terms of connectivity and being a country, we're extremely lucky to have the support of Welsh Government. So we can have conversations directly with Welsh Government, and that is, of course, very important when you're a company looking to inward to Wales, or to grow within Wales. We also then have access to central government as well. So we've got two different angles there in terms of government. We've of course also got the Welsh office, and we're also lucky to have the City Deal boards. And of course, what this creates, and also to mention, we now have DIT have a Welsh office as well. So what this creates is a super connected backdrop in terms of policy, in terms of being able to speak directly to government. And then, of course, that filters all the way down to how we can connect as businesses. And I just to put a shout out to Welsh Government's new export clusters. Welsh Government has been working extremely hard over the last 6 months with industry to get those cluster groups up and running. So in terms of connectivity and collaboration, that's a big tick for Wales. We have those things, and businesses are able to really join together and connect in that way. So then it moves me on to finance and investment. Probably the number one thing, if you like, for most businesses when they're looking to thrive and to scale. Can we get support from financial institutions? Can we get access to investment? The first part of that question is really quite easy in Wales, because we have a number of the big banks who are very, very supportive of entrepreneurs and of startup businesses. Of course, we have NatWest Entrepreneurial Spark, and that's been running for the last 5 years, I think now. And I still speak to growing companies who were there in the hub on day one and still recognise that NatWest was a key driver to them growing their businesses. We, of course, have Barclays with their Digital Eagle Labs, supporting companies to use 3D printers, laser cutters, and have access to that expertise. So I think we've got very supportive local banks and finance institutions. And then in terms of investment, we're increasingly seeing a number of VC organisations seeing Wales as a very good place to come and set up some of their funds. So last week in Tramshed, while you were in Dubai, Damon, and actually I was in London, so I wasn't here, but Mercia ran a big investment day here in Tramshed for companies looking to raise investment. We've got things like the British, the Business Growth Fund. And of course, we're really, really lucky to have Invest Wales, a network of local private investors who, I've got to say, over the last year, even during the pandemic, with the strong support of the Dev Bank, the Development Bank of Wales, and Carol Hall, who heads up Angels Invest Wales, those investors are getting more and more active in the ecosystem. And that's great, because a lot of the businesses I work with are saying that early seed money or pre-seed money is starting to trickle through. We know from all of the stats last year that big investments, those VC investments, are still massively outstripping access to those early stage funds. And Damon, you and I know we meet in a lot of startups and scaling companies. Sometimes it's that early money that can make all the difference. So still some work to do there, but it definitely is getting better. And then the last area, and I won't talk too much about it because I know Pete will definitely cover this from the university, but it's skills and training. And to go back to your question, why set up a tech business in Wales? We don't have any lack of talent in Wales, so that's really good. But like all areas of the UK, we are still struggling to fill key roles, and that's due to demand right across the piece. But we have an FE review currently underway. We've got a new school curriculum here in Wales, and I've got to say the universities, Cardiff University, really playing its part in things like degree apprenticeships and the software academy in Newport, just being a few of the examples of how that's working. So I mean, that's quite a compelling sales pitch, right? If I'm standing next to Tech North or I'm standing in Silicon Valley, I think I could sell Wales as the place to start a tech company.
No, absolutely fantastic. Completely agree. And I think I'll just go back just a little bit. I was actually in Dubai, not on holiday, unfortunately, but with, talking of connectivity, I mean, in fact, there's two areas. You'll know, obviously, the great work that DIT and Welsh Gov did with the relationship that we've developed as a tech industry in Cardiff and in Wales with the SQY region, and all the support that Richard from DIT and Jordan, when he was with Welsh Gov at the time, absolutely fantastic, amazing support. And that connectivity was amazing between all the different departments, and it shows that the governments work together and we benefit from that, which is a brill. And I'll give a great shout, because it was amazing to see well, everything really with the Dubai trade mission that we did with Welsh Government. Great big shout out to Richard Shattuck, Richard Harris and Ruth Stockley. They organised a fantastic trip, and it was amazing to see the investors in Dubai talking about Wales as well, and that was absolutely amazing. There is a real interest because we have had successes that have gone there, so their gaze is turning now to Wales, and that's amazing, because I think as an economy in tech, we have missed the attention of the VCs to help businesses grow, and the great work that you and Mark are doing, and Welsh Government in promoting everything around this is really helping, which is brilliant, because that, as you said, can be vital to get a company off the ground and give it the growth that it needs. So, Peter, I think moving on from that a second, because we're going to come and talk to Pete about skills in the moment. So what's the best way for businesses? So that's maybe businesses interested in coming to Wales and taking advantage of the ecosystem and the skills and the infrastructure that we have. What's the most effective ways for businesses to do that? How do they come into the country? And also, how can Welsh Government support the growth of our own homegrown talent?
Well, picking up on the first, how they go about. I mean, the first stage is obviously to make contact with us, and that can be either done through the website. A lot of our contact is actually person to person. So because of the connectivity, we've got groups like Cyber Wales for the cyber sector, for example. All the companies and all the connections, somebody will know somebody, and then somebody will make that referral to maybe myself, and a lot of it just comes by word of mouth. And then the first stage will be just to have an initial discussion with the company. You get to speak to a person in Welsh Government. You're not just filling in a form. And those discussions, we'll go into all aspects of your business, where you are, how you're funded, what your growth plans are, what sort of location you want to be in, and we'll just start the ball rolling with a discussion. and that could just, you don't just get given an appointment to talk to somebody in Welsh Government. That relationship will build. For example, the inquiries that I'm taking at the moment, you can contact me anytime to talk about whatever you want and whatever stage you're at. And going back to what Louise was saying about having that contact, it's very easy to build a relationship with us, and then we can grow that by we're close to the decision makers. So if we want to go forward with an investment, we can go straight to the minister. It's a reporting process, so we've got that closeness with our centre, not central government as in UK government, but the centre of Welsh Government. The people working for you on the ground have got that connection, so decision making is quicker.
Of course, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, just and what we like to come up with is a very sort of tailored package. We don't really have a one size fits all. We've got we've got investment schemes where we can put money into projects. We've got innovation schemes such as SMART, where we can fund research and development. We can link you into working groups such as Cyber Wales. We've got our trade mission program, which you've referred to, Damon, that we've got companies now that are sort of startup companies, and the thought of us facilitating a visit to either Dubai or San Francisco, they're really loving that opportunity.
It's fantastic. It gives an amazing platform, and I mean, talking about
new markets,
I mean, I remember when we initially we started getting the South Wales cybersecurity cluster off the ground, and Neil Sanford, your predecessor, was a huge supporter of that. And I remember we're having a discussion with Neil because with my cybersecurity hat on, one of the largest cybersecurity events, well, the largest one in Europe, is InfoSec Europe. And I always remember Welsh Government had a stand there for years, and basically the stand consisted of a Welsh Government stand. Our beaches are lovely, which no doubt they are, right? Our beaches are lovely. Here's a woolly sheep. And that was it. That was the cybersecurity stand for Welsh Government. And we obviously went to Neil and we said, look, is there anything we can do? I mean, we are more than happy to go there, talk about being a cybersecurity company and living in Wales and working in Wales. And Neil totally saw that, and the support that the guys gave was absolutely amazing, and that gave us a platform. And we're seeing that from the startups now that are coming along, and only talking to on the trade mission. So we had Daniel Lewis from Awyn Collective. The support that they've given him, he knows, and we've discussed it. It's been amazing. So you are dead right. That platform that is given by Welsh Government at the drop of a hat really has been phenomenal for Welsh-based companies. It's been amazing.
And it's completely flexible. It's something that we'll work with you to sort of understand what your needs are. We don't just try and push a product on you. We'll try and tailor things so that it works for you and whatever stage you're at. And it can be anything from making connections to investing money. It's difficult to come by money at the moment, but there's ways and means, and we work very closely with the development bank, Welsh Development Bank, and they're really enthusiastic about tech. We've got tech experts in there, and we can discuss your project with them, and they're making lots of investments in that area. So there's all sorts of things. Just come and have that chat. I'm on LinkedIn. My details are around, so just come and have that chat.
Fantastic, that's amazing. So, Mr. Burnett, Pete, so we all know, and my company is no different, the great work that the universities do in Wales. And so if you could spend a bit of time, I think, talking about the work that Cardiff Uni do, and in the areas, and speaking again as a company that we appreciate and understand the need to nurture talent, and grow that talent, and the work we know that Cardiff Uni do. We obviously were one of the partner sponsors for the awesome cyber society that you have in the uni, and I know all the great work that you do. So please tell us about the
definitely. So I'll start with skills then. So I mean, skills, I think right across the region. So it's not just Cardiff University. Obviously, we've got an accredited cybersecurity masters, which is brilliant, and USW and Cardiff Met also as well. So there's a number of actually accredited courses at undergraduate and postgraduate level. So the pipeline of skilled individuals is pretty huge. Right across tech, and we've got the National Software Academy here at Cardiff University, which is really hands-on learning, so learning by doing. The whole principle for setting that up was really to make sure that people, once they graduated in computer science, software engineering, cybersecurity, etc., were able to go into the job and do it from day one. And we've had enormous success of that, in so much as actually the graduates of the National Software Academy really look for a job. They're already snapped up by the time they're finished. So that's been really brilliant. At a schools level, we're also doing quite a lot, as our USW, as our Thales, NDEC, doing quite a lot in schools as well. Louise, obviously, and Big Learning Company, always out in schools trying to sort of enthuse and excite the next generation of talent. We've got some really exciting stuff on the horizon that we're around or about securing some funding to achieve, which is really hitting that gap in the middle. So we do some great stuff in schools, we do some great stuff in universities, and it's really trying to target the reskilling as well of adults moving sectors, moving careers, just to enhance that pipeline of talent even more. Really focusing again on hands-on learning by doing activities. I suppose just to touch as well on some of the stuff we're doing with industry, so genuine collaboration. We've just literally launched a new master's in cybersecurity and technology with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Essentially what they're doing now is they're hiring people in as this is into their sort of vulnerability testing, ethical hacking team, and then it's basically sending them to do the masters with us, but also PricewaterhouseCoopers are also co-delivering it. So there's actually a lecture going on down the hall where PwC are actually delivering a cyber forensics course. So you know, it's not just learning by doing, but it's learning by doing in co-delivery with key industrial experts, and we do that quite regularly. You know, so we have guest sessions from the likes of Wolfbury and in the other SMEs in the region, as well as the large tech companies. So you know, the Thales and the Airbuses of the world. So yeah, you talk about collaboration, and it's one of my bugbears is to say that just because people are in a region or in a nation, in this sense, that you're going to get genuine collaboration. It doesn't necessarily follow. Actually, it has to be done by, you know, people working together and delivering with clear outcomes. And I think on the skills side, we're actually, you know, really well established in that space. So just to touch then on the R&D side as well. So again, another one of my bugbears is where people suggest there's relationships that don't exist. And I think that the relationship between Airbus and Cardiff University locally here is a real, well, it's been described as a blueprint for how academia and industry should collaborate. So you know, the Airbus are continually setting challenges and problems for us as a university to work on. That's being worked on through secondments like myself. I've spent some time there, through researchers being employed by Airbus, through PhD studentships, through placements. So it's actually enhancing people's careers as well as creating sort of world-class, published in, you know, very high-end, top-end journals, but also translated into technology that Airbus are using in their business and as spin-outs in their own, you know, in their own business lines. So it's absolutely, you know, we're really doing very well on that front, and that reaches beyond Airbus. So like I said, we've got Thales, we've got strong R&D development going on at Thales, which is great because that's out into the valleys and into the regions. And the whole point there is, as well as creating new IP, particularly in the area of emerging technologies around energy and connected autonomous vehicles, it's also enthusing you know, effectively a region that needs that sort of boost. You know, it's still struggling to recover from the industrial age. And the stuff that's going on up there is I say, it's not just creating products that could be sold around the world through export, but really exciting the next generation of people to come and again learn by doing. So yeah, skills and research and innovation it's a genuine collaborative space with you know, without any sort of ivory towers at all. It's an open door, and you know, come and work here.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. And speaking from our, our own experience as a cybersecurity company in Wales, that we really benefit from the ability of the universities churn out fantastic students, and we're really lucky as well that the universities have sort of split the cybersecurity. I can only ever talk about cybersecurity really. Bear in mind this is a tech talk really more than anything else. But with cybersecurity, it's a very niche subject, but it is so wide, and the different areas from forensics you mentioned to the vulnerability scanning analysis, the governance stuff, the piece around policies and everything. It's so varied. It's amazing how the universities have almost stuck their flagpoles in different areas, so we cover so many areas, which I think is amazing, and we're incredibly lucky to do that. I mean, we could all be that all the universities do exactly the same thing. Yes, there's always going to be overlaps, but we're so lucky that from Swansea, and Aberystwyth do some amazing different things, right? And then up to North Wales as well with Bangor and those guys. We're incredibly lucky like that, and I think personally, as I can speak, we are definitely, as the education piece, hitting those targets of supplying work-ready students. I mean, Wolfbury, we run an academy which is for graduates to come in, and at any one time, well, at the moment, I always said we've got about 30 or 40 good candidates that we could bring on in hold, if you imagine an airport analogy, in hold, flowing above, waiting to come on board. But it was only last week we had the updated figures. We currently got about 60 students that we can bring in as full-time, work-ready, graduated employees, which is absolutely amazing. Our biggest challenge is finding those those people who, with the 2 to 5 years work experience, they've already, been educated, and then they've already moved on and actually done some work for a couple of years. That for us is always the biggest challenge, and I know it's across my sector globally. But so I'd sort of open this up to all of you really. How important is it really to have those blue chip companies in? For me, I'll tell you where I think with it. So trying to attract the Alert Logics, the Airbuses, the Thaleses, and these types of organizations, CGIs, and keeping them in Wales, I think is vital, because it brings off those, the R&D is powered by those guys, right? A lot of the work that in universities is done. If you think Thales, General Dynamics, and those guys. Oh. So I think those guys are vital. So I'd open that up to all of you really to talk about that, and what experiences, Peter, maybe within the renewable energy sector with you as well, right? What experiences have you guys had of great tech companies, blue chip companies coming in and improving the ecosystem really?
Well, I think if I refer back to renewable energy, I mean, it was the sector I was in was the marine side of things, so marine energy. And at the moment, there aren't really the blue chip companies in marine, but we were getting the smaller companies. It makes them really aspirational, because they want to be the name, and the prize at the end of that was collaborating or having endorsement from your big energy companies, your RWEs, companies such as Siemens. They were starting to invest in the smaller companies, so the smaller companies were getting recognised, and that I think was it was motivational. The company wants to get their technology developed and recognised. So having those blue chip companies looking at Wales, we found that hugely beneficial. Whether they locate here or whether they invest here, it just brings on the smaller companies. And what I'm seeing now is the renewable energy companies that I was working with, some of the marine ones, they're drawing in some massive investments as time sort of moves on and the technology improves. They're getting their devices out into the test centres, they're proving the technology, and those investments are increasing. And sooner or later, one of those technologies will become the default system for your Siemens, your RWEs, Empower, you know, the big companies.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah.
So,
Louise, so how have partnerships helped, you know, with Tramchat? I know you've got some great relationships with some, you know, banks and some, well, yeah, if you think of the series that you've done with Hodge Bank, you've obviously got your Google Startup Academy, and you've also got Barclays Eagle Labs with you guys now as well, and Microsoft. What is the importance to you as an organization for those?
I think before we built Tramshed, I went on a bit of a tour around different ecosystems, and I remember before the BBC located to central Cardiff, going on a bit of a mission with some of the guys from the BBC. So they were looking at how creative industries had clustered together and what was the effect of a big organisation like a BBC opening a big HQ in somewhere like Salford or Manchester.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to go, you know, global to look at some of these places. And what I heard a lot of was the smaller companies being quite fearful of the big blue chip companies, the big prime organisations coming in. And they were worried about mainly talent, because they're thinking, you know, we've just spent all this time building up, you know, some AI talent, and someone like a big challenger bank is going to come in and wipe all of that out. And I saw it when I went to Salford and I looked at Media City, and, you know, there were lots of growing companies there, but they were quite fearful about what those big organisations might mean. You know, and we've seen it a lot now in Wales with a lot of the public sector organisations, HMRC coming into the city in Cardiff, for example. And I think it's actually the complete opposite. It's very scary for smaller companies, but I think I noticed Claire Mitchell is on the call and put in the chat about Thales. Damon, you and I were lucky enough to go to Station F in Paris with the help of Welsh Government. And there we saw Thales really pushing forward in terms of cybersecurity and other technologies, helping entrepreneurs to spin out companies. And they realised, as a big organisation, that isn't necessarily for us to just collect all of those companies and pull them into Thales. But then that was about solving internal problems, solving customer problems, and then also regenerating and replenishing the wider ecosystem. We've only got to look at what's happened in insurtech in Wales, in fintech in Wales, with having Admiral based here. We've only got to look at what's happened to the mature creative industries that we've got by having Bad Wolf here, by having Boom here, by having the BBC, by having ITV.
Yeah.
Those big organisations can afford to invest in skills and training. They can afford to invest in growing the ecosystem. Where I see the downside and the real challenge, and it's somewhere where Tramshed has tried to help, is the dialogue between the big prime organisations and the scale-up and startup ecosystem. They don't always same language, and of course prime organisations have processes, they have big organisations, they have lots of governance and compliance that they have to get through, and startups can be really agile, but they don't understand that necessarily. They think things can happen overnight, like all good entrepreneurs do. And then they get into working with a big prime, and it can take years to get anything to happen. So it's one thing we could get better at in Wales, is not being fearful of bringing those people together. You mentioned Hodge, Damon, and Hodge has been fantastic at that. We've worked really closely with them at bringing in entrepreneurs, bringing in innovators, bringing in startup companies to try and solve some of the big challenges that today's banks face. It's possible, it can be done, but it needs that real collaborative communication to bring it all together, I think.
Yeah, I think people, what we don't need as a nation to be afraid of is competition, right? Because competition is where innovation is bred, right? If you invent something and it's great, and then it's really difficult to push that forward. Ideally, what you want are other organizations doing something similar to you, and then, it accelerates the innovation and keeps you on your toes. And that's really, really important, I think, as personally. But I'll tell you as well, and there's a couple of things to pick up. You mentioned some great companies a couple of minutes ago, the Go Compares and things like that. And Wales has got such a compelling story to tell globally, right? So that's for businesses within Wales to be able to grow. And I was talking at the expo in Dubai last week, and we had a great discussion around this then, actually, around, how do we sell the story of Wales, right? The successes. And that's really, really important. So I'd like to open that up to all of you, really. What can we do as a nation, as a collective, to promote the fantastic things that we do? The fact that we've got all these amazing fintech companies and great work that the university is doing, and the agile support the Welsh government can give. How do we promote that? Any one of you first.
Do you want me to go first?
Go on.
I mean, one of our key, we've got 21 offices in 12 countries.
Yeah.
So the first thing we've got a very active network of business relationship managers and area managers in those countries, and they are traveling. They cover some big areas as well, and Europe, North America is covered by one or two people, so they're always out there promoting what Wales is doing. The Middle East, you met Jo out there. She covers Middle East, North Africa, very large territory, all of the different sectors that we work in. So she's constantly promoting.
Yeah, and you've
what
got
we're doing, yeah.
That's right. The special envoys as well. We were discussing earlier about Alan Miles, who's done a fantastic job, a good Bridgend boy, promoting all the fantastic things in Wales. But it's messaging, I think, as well. So how do we get those success messages over to someone like Alan, who then can evangelize about Wales? It's about increasing that diaspora as well, isn't it? And there's something that Ireland and the Irish have always been absolutely amazing at, and we shouldn't underplay the influence Wales has across the globe. I always remember, a couple of years ago, I had to go to Abu Dhabi for a meeting, and it was quite literally, I sat in a hotel lobby. The first gentleman came in was from Penarth, and we sat there, we were talking about the fact that I live in Cardiff, he's from Penarth, and then another gentleman came in who was from Bridgend. Everybody's from Bridgend for some reason, right? He came in from Bridgend, working for Raytheon, and we were sitting in Abu Dhabi, having three Welsh blokes, having a meeting that we could have had at Cardiff Gate Services, right? Although the location was much prettier, I will say. So it is that understanding and joining those dots, I think, which is key for Welsh Government, being able to know what those dots are and then joining them together. So, yeah. And Pete, I mean, you do a lot of outreach work globally as a university, right?
Yeah, I think so. I was just going to chip in. I mean, if there's one thing that I would say to focus on real outcomes, like things that have actually been done. I think it's great to talk about bits and pieces, but I think if people hear more about actual outcomes, so for example, an idea that was turned into a product that was transitioned into a company, or like this new masters that's co-delivered by a big company, that's something that they can actually understand. And I think we do it well, but I think we could do that a little bit more. Take away some of the quantity, and focus on some of the key, real solid outcomes that somebody who was a big company looking to inward invest, or an investor looking to come and put some money into the region, would say, right, well, if that's there, I'll go and actually look at that. That's something I can get my teeth into. So yeah, if it was anything, I think it's just really focus on those key actual delivered outcomes, and then obviously then more generally it's then focusing, I think this is what we do quite well, is define the expected outcomes when starting a new program, when starting a new collaboration. So you're designing your outcomes into your collaboration so that you've got something to talk about the other side, because I think that's what'll attract people is having something they can identify with.
Yeah, so it's Lou, right? If you think, again, this came up last week when we were discussing it, around organizations do a fantastic job of promoting themselves, right? So Wolfbury, we do a lot of social media work, and Tramshed do so much, and they do so much supporting their startup community and their larger, wider companies that they work with. So that's fantastic. But if someone's not following Tramshed, they're not going to see that information. I mean, we did a bit of a tour of Wales 2 or 3 weeks ago, Kerry and myself, and we saw some amazing companies that do absolutely amazing things, but no one knew. We just didn't know that they were, that's, you know, they 100 million to 300 million pound turnover companies sitting down in Swansea, and we were completely oblivious to them. So I mean, how do we do that? I mean, Silicon Valley managed to do it, right? They celebrate the successes. So Lou, how can we do that? Because unless someone's focused on following that company, you know, what can we do in Wales to promote successes more?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and there's probably not one silver bullet, there's probably not one answer. But you know, if you looked at the recent Development Bank deal maker report that they put out, you know, we've got over 1,200 high growth companies in Wales. That represents 6% of all the high growth companies in the UK. And a lot of those are in the semiconductor cluster, they're in the technology sector. Obviously, we're strong in the food and beverage sectors as well. But what I would say is that a lot of the discussion that we've had over the last few minutes has been around our external comms, and obviously, you know, the university, Cardiff University, do a great job of that. Welsh Government with their envoys and the DIT network as well do a great job. We've got Global Welsh that's out there working with the diaspora. So there's lots of external comms going out, and I think you're right, that still needs to be amplified, and we shouldn't apologise about the things that we're doing here in Wales. But there also needs to be a bit of an internal comms piece as well, and I think that's around. I think it's a big problem for tech. It's not necessarily a big problem for food and beverage. So if you pick up the Western Mail or you read an article and it says Pembrokeshire gin in the Welsh wins global gin bottle of the year, and I'm in a restaurant or I'm in a library or I'm in the supermarket and I bump into a friend and I say, oh, did you hear about that company from Pembrokeshire? They've won this Welsh gin of the year. And I'm confident to talk about it, and my friends will be confident to talk about it. But let's say, for example, the story around, let's say someone like Delio, who've just gone and raised another, I think, 7 million, or Zero, SERO, the net zero carbon house technology. They've just gone and raised 6-7 million. You know, these companies, are we fearful about talking about them because we don't quite understand the technology that underpins them? And I think we've got to get over that. You know, we need to be able to shout about Wales as a home for tech and digital businesses. And let's face it, none of us on this call are going to understand every bit of tech or every bit of new emerging technology that's out there. But we have to have the confidence as a nation to say we can lead in these areas. And we're getting so much better. But I do think it's that worrying thing about putting yourself out there in terms of tech and perhaps making yourself look a bit silly. You know, Pete mentioned working with schools. If I had £1 for every teacher that said to me, oh, I'm not a tech expert, but then they go in their classroom and they turn on the interactive whiteboard and they're using Hub as their virtual learning environment, and they've got the kids all using interactive technologies. I'm like, you are an expert in tech. You're doing it. You're using it. So I think we've just got to get a bit better internally with the confidence we have around the tech businesses. I tried to share in the chat, last summer we did a report called the 12 Clusters of Tech. It was a UK-wide report. We did one for Wales. I'll try and share it in the chat if I can. And that just highlighted some of the fastest growing technology companies, and there's some really interesting ones in there, including Wolfbury, of course.
Of course, yeah, quite right. Yeah, so if you're unable to share that, what we can do, we can send it around afterwards as an email to everybody. That'll be fantastic if you could share that. But yeah, it's I think one of the things that I think has always been a concern and is the capacity to incubate businesses in the UK. Well, sorry, in Wales even, right? In the, you know, we'll get spin-off companies starting, and then they look to grow, and then they attract, whether it's Dubai, they attract investment, and then they go over there, and then sometimes they don't come back. So it's not, and I think Wales has been just a history of small companies starting up and then going elsewhere to grow and to develop. So again, Louise, this is for you really more than anything else, is that, you know, building that startup environment, not just in Cardiff, but around Wales, you know, making sure there are places for businesses to be able to grow and then scale. So start with one desk, then 2.5, very much like we've done with you guys, you know, over the last couple of years. So, I mean, I know that you've expanded and are expanding constantly, right?
Yeah, I don't think we have problems starting businesses. Okay,
yeah.
So we know that we have lots of entrepreneurs, we have lots of innovators. Pete will be able to explain the amount of students that have really amazing innovative ideas. Starting a business is not the problem. It's keeping that business going. And we know that 90%, at least 90% of entrepreneurs fail. So they start a business, it may be a brilliant idea or a bad idea, but 90% of those ideas don't last, and they don't go into that phase of creating jobs. And of course, the most exciting thing about, or one of the most exciting things about the tech and digital sector is those high value jobs that we can bring here to Wales. So why does that happen? Why do those companies fail? And we've spent a lot of time thinking about this, researching this, speaking to entrepreneurs. And it's usually the same things that cause those entrepreneurs a problem. And you know, we have a lot of the answers to those in our ecosystem, but we don't necessarily get the message out as much as we could do to those businesses. So I would say, you know, the problem isn't starting the businesses, the problem is helping those businesses to thrive. During COVID, you mentioned Google earlier. So Google had a big hub in the centre of London, and we've been working with Google since the inception of Tramshed. We had the Google garage here for a few years, and Google approached us during COVID and explained that they were going to be shutting the London hub, and they wanted to try an experiment, which was to see if they brought their Google for Startups programme to Wales and also to Scotland, with code base in Scotland and with us in Wales, would they be able to get the same amount of startups across the UK thriving? And I'm really pleased to say we are now the only partner at the moment that is delivering that startup programme for Google. And I have been absolutely blown away by the quality of Welsh entrepreneurs and innovators. We actually had an 18-year-old young woman on the first cohort who during COVID, she'd used her lockdown to, and this probably puts a lot of us to shame who were not so active, but she in her mum's basement, she started to grow mushrooms, and she realized that she could harvest the psyllium from mushrooms, and that fungus, if you like, would eat plastic. And so she started a business to reduce the amount of plastic in our oceans using mushrooms. And that was just one of the innovations, which totally blew me away. But without having a startup program, without bringing that cohort together, we would never have found out about that innovation, and we wouldn't have been able to help. You know, we've linked that that young lady up with Cardiff University. She's now working with some experts in that field, which is really exciting. Google have taken them under their wing and are helping her as well. So we need those programs. We need to be able to bring those cohorts together to make sure that we turn the dial on those 90% failures, if you like.
Yeah, well, that puts me to shame because I just built a recording studio. I was quite selfish of me, wasn't it, in the first lockdown? So I just sat there playing guitars. So, Pete,
don't grow mushrooms, Damon.
No, no growing mushrooms. No, no, no. No. Pete, Louise mentioned then, obviously, what is your team's and your university's approach to sort of managing innovation and the startups and nurturing of that? You know, how do you guys go about that at the moment?
Yeah, so one of the things we're trying to do is say find that pipeline through to commercialization, and we're doing quite a bit at the moment around actually turning things into product. So we've actually had a significant investment into test beds to actually show things in real life, if you like. So we've got a representative manufacturing line in the lab, for example, a sort of a smart city environment. We've got a scaled out enterprise network, so 100, 200 PCs, just like it would be in an office, so that the students and well, any of the IP creators, and this is open, by the way, this is not just exclusive to Cardiff University. The whole reason for building it was to open it up to innovators and entrepreneurs to come and actually see how this might work in reality. So, you know, to take Louise's example, if somebody's building something on their laptop, how can they have the confidence that they could take this through as a product to market? So I suppose what we've got there is quite a nice matchmaking environment where we've got our strong links to the larger companies who could actually validate this as, yeah, there is a market need for this, because that's one of the reasons why companies don't get off the ground, because there's actually no market need for their product. Actually helping them validate and verify and showcase their solution, if you like, in a realistic scenario, so brought to life. And then the last thing we're doing as well then is to work alongside, you know, commercialization partners, the likes of Tramshed, the likes of Alacrity and Newport, to try and help build that into a company, you know, because it is very hard. There's a number of different programs out there to try and help get IP out of universities, but it does depend largely on a researcher generally trying to sort of win that battle, if you like, that little battle to get off the ground. So we're trying to do more matchmaking between, you know, the IP creators, if you like, and the commercializers, so that there's that, you know, proper team, which again is another reason why startups don't get off the ground, is because they haven't got the right team wrapped around the product. So we're trying to sort of incubate and collaborate around that to make these things happen, and sort of then increase that pipeline of people who are looking for the money. And I think that's the third sort of thing there we're trying to do is attract more sort of smart capital investment in the IP. But that's hard because they can go anywhere all around the world to look for these investments. Why would they come here? And we've already talked about all the good stuff we've got. So we're trying to push all of that together now to attract more investors, because they'll keep coming back, because they'll invest here because they know they come back next week as another invention, come back next week as another invention, and so on and so on. So that's a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do at the moment, is really pull this whole ecosystem and I suppose pipeline of IP through to product together to try and enhance that and accelerate that best we can.
Oh, that's awesome. And that follows then, lovely then, Peter, to the work that you guys do in Welsh Government, because as Pete said, you know, they do that market research piece, you know, is the product viable, and understanding the market and then growing past incubator stage. And then once they're becoming more established, Welsh Government are there. You already mentioned the 20+ offices that we have around the planet, and the envoys are able to provide market research, advice and guidance. So if you'd like to talk about that, that'd be amazing.
Well, I think one of our benefits is that the teams we've got working around tech and with the companies, we don't all know everything. You know, I certainly don't know everything. So when somebody approaches any one of us, the teams all work very well together. So if I don't know something, I'll know somebody who does. So if you're coming to Wales, you know, we can connect you in with the right people. Certainly on the innovation side of things, you know, we've got good links with the Catapults and Innovate UK. We've got our innovation specialists, and they'll know that industry inside out. And their reach is global as well. You know, so they'll work with companies that are in Wales or companies that are coming into Wales. So it takes us back to the opening about the connectivity. You know,
Yeah.
we're very the teams in Welsh Government are sort of very well connected.
Yeah.
We'll listen to what the company wants. We'll try and get a good understanding of what that company wants, and then we'll put them in the right place. So, you know, if it means speaking to the university, we'll know somebody in the university to put them in contact with the university, and then they'll start that journey with the university. We've worked a lot, certainly in my marine energy days, we worked a lot with the various catapults. There's a marine energy catapult, and we found that when companies had problems with their technology, it wasn't Welsh Government, we couldn't give them the answer. We got somebody from the catapult, and then the catapult would put them on a program or link them into a company. You know, you then go back to a company who could help them with that problem.
Yeah.
So it's our knowledge, I think, that we have. You know, we can't solve everything, but we'll know somebody who can.
No, completely. I think what Wales should do now, we should think beyond catapults now. We should think bigger. I think we should think trebuchets these days, right? Bigger ideas, right? You can Google that if you don't know what a trebuchet is. That's fine. Right. So, I mean, I've just had a warning come up now, so I know we're just wrapping up. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and really appreciate all the efforts and the discussion that the panel have come up with. But I'm going to ask you very quickly now, just very short answers, right? What the USP for Wales is, you know, why is Wales so, such an inviting place for tech companies to grow? Louise, I'm going to start with you. Give the other two time to think.
Yeah, thanks for that, Damon.
Yeah,
and I'm not allowed to say beaches, apparently.
Say beaches, it's just the weather's awful. Yeah.
I think, well, I'll break it. I'll say our USP, but I'll say our challenge as well. I think our USP is that connectivity.
Yeah.
We're a country, we can test bed as a country. If you've got a bit of tech, if you've got an emerging platform, there's no better place than Wales to be able to test that, supported by, as Peter's expertly outlined there, our FE and HE sector. So I'd say that that's a USP, but then perhaps other regions and other countries would say that as well. So I'll just add to that a challenge, and I think we've pulled it out today. I think our challenge is we have to get better at describing that. So we have to get better at having the words and the narrative to describe that. And as Pete said, I can't agree more. We've got to start showcasing those big wins, because that's what will put us on that global platform.
Completely agree. And same to you, Pete.
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to what I said earlier around the outcomes. You know, I really do think actually the collaborations we've got going here, they are delivering. And although that might not sound like a USP, I've spoken to enough people over the years to know that, you know, not all collaborations lead to outcomes. And I think that's one thing I would claim. I think we do deliver. We're delivering, also from the university perspective, I think we're delivering for our industry partners. We're delivering to support the Welsh Government agenda. We're delivering on skills programs, which are also reflective of industry needs, but also the local needs, which is creating a pool of people that are going to be able to fill roles if people were going to come here. So and just to pick up on Louise's point, and I think it's shouting about those, but I really do think we deliver on what we say we're going to do. Yeah,
we talk the talk, right, and walk the walk, right? That's fantastic. Yep. It's so important. You completely agree. And then finally, Peter, you've got 30 seconds.
Oh, I think we've got a complete package of business support for everyone. We can help start up, and we've also successfully attracted the likes of Airbus, Thales, and Aston Martin, the global brands. We were competing on a world scale to attract the Aston Martin facility, and there was enough here to attract them to set up in Wales. No. So I think we can offer pretty much everything.
Definitely, completely. No, thank you so much for joining us today. Big thank you to Pete, Peter, and Louise. Brilliant. Really appreciate your input and your knowledge. Fantastic. And I'd also like to say a big thanks to Dan Langford and Mike Jordan and the wider Wales Week team for organising so many great events. And Wolfbury were really, really pleased to be able to contribute to events over the last couple of weeks. So thank you so much, everybody. Everybody take care. Guys, see you all very soon.
Thank you very much. See you there, everyone.
Bye all.